Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hello everybody, I'm an alcoholic and my name is Sue. It's good to be here. Already I can tell you this alcoholic's heart is really full. I want to welcome all those newcomers and wish everybody happy birthday. Those are quite milestones, especially the youngster. Oh boy, I thought I was young when I got sober. But my heart is especially full tonight because my brother Michael is leading the meeting, and my sister Amy read you the 12 steps, and my husband was their 10-minute speaker, you know. So we got this wrapped up, you know what I mean? And you can't complain to any one of us because we got it covered too, you know. But you know, this thing, they call it a family disease. You've only seen half of it because there's a lot more of us out there. Some of us are sober, and some of us are not sober, and some of us suffer from the disease that don't drink and they go to meetings called Al-Anon. And those kids that are a member of these families now go to Alateen, you know, and when I came in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I remember hearing that it was a family disease and I didn't know what they were talking about. I was pretty sick because I lived in a family where both my parents are alcoholic, and you could say that out of 12 kids, there's probably 7 or 8 of us that'll probably qualify for this program. The rest of them are just plain nuts. I think I'd rather be on this side of the coin than the other side, because I know what makes me crazy. I know if I drink, I get drunk, and I do stupid things, you know, and I've been going to Al-Anon for some time now, as well as going to AA, because I have brothers and sisters who suffer from this disease, but I also have other members of my family that I need to go to Al-Anon for, so I've learned a lot more from a different perspective, and I'm glad that I've gone, because it was really, for a long time, I used to sit there and, say, oh, the Al-Anons, and I find that they have a lot to say, especially about dealing with the effects of active alcoholism. They have a lot of courage, those people. They've had to watch those of us that have gone out and drank ourselves near to death. And lack of power is our dilemma, and you can imagine what theirs is, you know. So I'm really grateful. My brother Mikey and my sister Amy here, and with my husband, I thought that alcohol and drugs was going to fix me. I thought that money, property, and prestige was going to fix me. I didn't know that serenity and peace of mind was really the answer. I didn't know that, as Rex said, got to get Rex, I'm sorry, you got to get it right. Don't want to be thrown out already. That by living these 12 steps, I would find a kind of life that I look for at the bottom of every bottle, whether it be alcohol, pill form, whatever form it was. I was looking for the answer at the bottom of every bottle, and I couldn't find it. And I couldn't find it in the bar, and I couldn't find it in people, places, and things, and money didn't do any good, and nothing did any good. I was just this empty shell of a person that walked around all the time. I felt lonely. I felt, just terribly weird. I thought I wore a neon sign that said weird, and it would glare at you, because you knew somehow before I ever opened up my mouth that I was different. You just knew that. Maybe you were alcoholic too, I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like today. Um, when I was growing up, there's plenty of us around. Both my parents, as I said, was alcoholic. Um, we, my parents divorced when I was very young, and we moved to Mexico City. And when that was my mom's geographic, I think. I don't know for sure. I'll have to ask her one of these days. And we landed in Mexico City, and we got some horses. That first Christmas we were there, and that's where I spent all my time, away from the family and in that stable. And I can tell you that another thing about me is that I'm hard of hearing, so it was kind of easy for me to tune out. I just didn't pay attention. I didn't get my first hearing aid until I was 14 years old, so I really didn't hear a lot, but then there's just times where it's convenient not to hear. And living in that kind of household, it was pretty easy. You could tune out. And if I couldn't tune out physically, then I would tune out emotionally in any other way I could. And so I went and spent time with these horses, and there was a lot going on. And we moved back, and we moved back to Santa Barbara. My mom's drinking got real bad. My dad was not present in our life very much that I can remember. And I bet you, if you were to have Michael or Amy tell their stories tonight following me, you'd probably get a different story, you know. And it's I listened to their story, and I said, where was I when that was going on? You know, and that's the way it is, because you can hear a different perspective. We're all going through. We think we should write a book from everybody's different. One Christmas in particular, we should pick out. It was really insane. But just, we got 3 horses. There was 3 go-karts, 2 dogs that had rabies and were in the closet because they were frothing, jumping against. Boys got their fingers stuck in the motorcycle. I mean, the go-kart's motor. One got his arm burnt. Mom was walking around with a tall glass of gin. That's what it was like, growing up in this household. We had numbers and colors. My name is Sue. My color's blue. My number's 2. Thank you. They're never coming back to this meeting because you'll be asking them what their numbers and colors are, right? But I was the oldest girl. I have older brother Bill. And anyway, we moved back to the States in Santa Barbara. Mom's drinking got real bad. We followed our parents' geographics, you know what I mean? And so they came back, and Mom split with her second husband. He called our father and said, come and get your 7. He did. He came and got us, and he shipped me off to a place called Convent of the Sacred Heart. They make nuns in this place. I was sure there was a message behind this, I was only 14 years old, but I thought it was already pretty bad, you know what I mean? And there was rooms were real small, and I thought I was being punished, and I came home every 3 months, and it was just really a weird way to live. And during this whole time, I was in my 8th grade to my senior year that I stayed in this place. And during this whole time, I'd come home, and it seemed like we'd move, or there would be somebody else in the family, or something would be different, And then I'd go home back to school, and that was just about the only quiet time I had. That was actually when I first got my first hearing aid, and it seemed to me that I had a lot of catching up to do, and because I hadn't heard a lot at that point. And so anyway, during that time, we changed hands ad nauseum. I think we signed a petition to return to Mom or something like that, and she reluctantly took us, and she got an apartment in Santa Monica. But she made sure, she's an alcoholic, she made sure that her bases were covered. So she got herself an apartment in North Hollywood. And she lived in the apartment, and we lived in the house. And she had somebody there to take care of us, and drive us around, and that's the way it was, And so you can imagine there was a little problem with discipline. We'll use that word. The D word, discipline. What's that? So I'd come home, and I'd visit for a while, and I'd go back, and I just sort of lived in a fantasy world. And anyway, I came home from high school, and my first drink was right about the year before that. I came home, and Mom had this lady, we called her Grandma, or some of us call her Mrs. Lee, whatever, and she took us to Disneyland at Christmas time for New Year's Eve, and we all piled into 2 rooms at the Disneyland Hotel. And what I remember about that night is that there was a big bathtub full of beer and wine. And there was people smoking these weird things, and they were sitting on the bed, and they were talking and laughing a lot. And a lot of what Dale talked about, being on the outside looking in, that was me. There was a glass wall between me and the world, and it didn't just have to do with the fact that I couldn't hear a lot. It was just that I, felt distant from people. And I saw what they were doing, and if you don't know, don't ask because you don't want to look stupid. But they were laughing, and they were having a good time. And it seemed to me whatever they were doing in that room that night, that time, was a key to having a good time. So I'd set out to, at that very moment, to figure out what that was. And that first night I had some beer, and I don't remember what kind it was, but I remember being told to go to bed. And I remember waking up the next morning and feeling remorse and shame because I had been pretty stupid the night before, and I had no idea what I'd done, but people were kind of looking at me like, oh my God, that kind of thing. And so anyway, I came home from high school, and it seemed to me that I was going to learn about life because I had learned a lot about book learning, but I knew nothing about life. So that's what I set out to do, and it seemed to me the way to do that was to learn about drugs and alcohol. My first clue should have been right there. So I set out to do that. So my second drink was actually before I came home from high school. It was my 18th birthday, and I drank a 6-pack of Schlitz malt liquor, threw up, and passed out. And things just generally didn't improve. I came home from high school, and I wanted to know what to do with my life. So I tried airline school, that didn't work. I tried to be a dog groomer, that didn't work. I tried school, put my hand up, gave the wrong answer, never went back. I was demoralized. I was ashamed. I should have known better. And I tried a whole bunch of things, and finally I landed in this place in sales, and that's what I was doing. And long about that time, this girl came in, and she was from Europe, and she suggested that maybe there was a book out, and I wish I could remember the name of it, but talked about touring around Europe, and she thought we should do that. But so I said, well, fine. Nothing seemed to be, applied to my life right at that moment, so off we were going to go off. But first I had to kind of get straightened out. So I went out to this place in Lancaster called the Bermudian. It was a place to lose weight and kind of get thinned out because I'd already gotten involved in drugs and alcohol very actively at this point. I had found when I came home from high school, I started hanging around the lowriders in San Fernando Valley. This is like my third drink. I was up on this place called Eagle Rock, and they were, I was driving down Van Nuys Boulevard in a lowrider car, and underneath my feet was a huge bag of Reds, and this guy said, help yourself, First of all, I didn't know what it was. That's how naive I was. Secondly, I didn't know where we were going and who this guy was. But here I was, and I'd been drinking high-class stuff, Brew 102 beer. You've been there, huh? Probably you were at that party too, right? So anyway, I was drinking this beer, and then this guy got stabbed 32 times over a hat, and this is my third drink. And I can tell you things didn't generally improve, they just kept getting worse. And I started hanging out in 2 bars. I just said I'd like to dance, which I do, but I kind of like the drink part a little better. And anyway, I was going to go to Europe. And so I kind of had to get a little detox before I went and get straightened out. And while I was out there, I met some people and decided that Europe was too far away and that I just needed to move to Lancaster. Does the word sick apply here? No. Don't know what I was doing out there, but there I was. And shortly after I moved out there, I had moved not just to Lancaster, I moved to Roseman. And I had 7 horses, 7 dogs, 3 cats, and a bull. Don't ask me why, but there they were. And actually, I'd said I was going to raise horses. That was what's going to really fix me, And so it was, I was looking for the answer in every other thing. And so there I am out in Lancaster. I used to. I found two liquor stores because, and they were only 2 in Roseman, and they faced each other. So I would go to one liquor store, and I'd tell them this big, elaborate story about how my family was going to come visit, and that's why I was buying in gallons. Many gallons, not just a gallon, many gallons of, this and that and this and that. And then the very next week, I'd go across the street and tell him the same story. And, I always wondered if they compared notes. But I was drinking a lot, okay? And right after I got out there, I had some surgery, and I found a doctor who had prescribed me certain prescribed medicines, and I found a pharmacy that didn't care how often I refilled them. So I was doing a lot of mad chemistry, trying to figure out how to fill up this horrible, empty part in my gut and in my soul that said that I was nothing. And so I used to take the horses for midnight rides. I'd fill up a canteen about this big full of white wine. And because in case you got stopped by the cops, because out there you did, they just cruised the boulevards, so they cruised off-road too. And I figured if I could turn it over and pour it out, they'd think it's water. It never occurred to me they could smell it. And so, and there's a lot of nights the horses beat me home. I'd have to go find my house, and usually it's about morning when I found it. And I'd start doing a lot of stuff. I was looking, changing groups, doing all this other stuff. And in April of '74, I was hanging around a bunch of, I had one horse that was a barrel horse, and so that's fun to do, by the way. Try that when you're drinking, barrel racing. So a lot of times the horse will leave you on top of the barrel. You'd make the turn and you'd forget that you were riding a horse, And they don't have safety belts in this, nothing to hold you on. And so there was times that I went headfirst into a railroad post and just a lot of lovely things. And anyway, I have been trying various methods, mad chemistry and different things of drinking and not drinking and changing groups and what have you, and no jobs because when I turned 21 and inherited some money, don't get excited, it's all gone. But, part of the story of that, my story was that my thing was that I felt that it was up to me to give the party because my self-esteem was so far in the gutter that I thought that's the only way people would stick around me was if I played the party. And when the party was over, they were gone, and I was sure that was the reason and the only reason that people stuck around me. It may have been the case at that time, but that's not the case today. But anyway, so my alcohol and drugging took me a number of places, and it was just a period of my life that I thought I wasn't going to drink anymore. And my next door neighbor had a kennel, and she said, well, it was a period of 2 weeks. She said, I bet you can't drink for 2 weeks. And I said, oh, yeah, and so I didn't drink for 2 weeks. That was the longest 2 weeks of my life. And, I was taking those funny mind-altering prescribed drugs. And at the end of 2 weeks, she said, well, let's go celebrate. And I said, that sounds like a good idea. Where are we going? She says, we're going to California City. I said, what? California City? What are we going to do in California? She said, we're going to the movies. And we went and saw 2 Disney movies. And I thought, this is really not celebration as I know it. And not my cup of tea, gang, shall we say that. And so we go to the movies, we come home, and actually went to have a pizza across the way. And I remember walking into this pizza parlor, and in this pizza parlor was there was like a Shakey's with long tables, and on this one table was a pitcher of beer. And I had not been drinking for 2 weeks, and man, it was like a magnet. I just looked at this beer, and it was like, it was frothing, and it had cold around, and the whole 9 yards. And to this day, I can see that picture of that beer sitting right there, and.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
Hello, and Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh yeah, that's right. And I was thirsty that night. So I had one beer. You ever had one beer? Whoa, and I didn't have any in the house. I'd gone through that period of time where there was none in the house. And I lived on Avenue A and 45th West. The nearest liquor store is 15 miles away, And it's after midnight now, so I had to figure out how to get rid of her, get home, and get to the liquor store before the strike of 2 o'clock. Because it was going to, I had to have another drink. I had to have another drink. So we made it home at 2:01, you know, and I'm pacing. I'm pacing. And the lights are on, and the TV in those days only had these weird shows, you know what I mean. And so they were over. It was Sunday night. And there was no bars, no alcohol, no nothing to be had, and I'm pacing. Well, there comes a knock on the door. And the knock on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning in Avenue A and 45th West is a little bizarre, you know. And I opened the door like a dummy. And in behind this door was, I think I asked, I don't remember who it was, and they said it was this guy and this friend, and they wanted to party, and they had the booze. They had the booze, and so they came in. And, I had tried to do the right thing, and my conscience had caught up with me, and it said, don't drink. You're trying to do the right thing. And I said, guys, really can't do this. Would you please go home? And that night, my little bubble burst. That night, they'd had far more to drink and far more other things in their body, and they decided they wanted to party. And when I said no, that was not the answer they wanted to hear. And that night, I was beaten up very badly, and I was raped, and a knife was held on me until daylight. And, alcohol takes us to a lot of places, and that was one of the places that alcohol took me. And from that day on, I drank because I had to, because I now knew that my outsides matched my insides, that I felt crummy, but now my outsides and my insides matched. And there was no question whether or not I was to drink anymore. I felt horrible, I felt ugly, and I felt spiritually dead, and I had to drink. There wasn't enough alcohol, drugs, or anything to put that thing out. And I just drank and drank and drank. And things got worse, believe it or not. They actually got worse from there. And I started hanging around people that I shouldn't hang around, but the way I felt about me, they were a step up. And I started going places that I shouldn't go, but what the hell, I wanted to die anyway, And I started doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Anyway, I went out one night to have dinner with a girlfriend of mine, and by this time I had no relationships with anybody because they didn't like being around me. I was too uncomfortable to be around. And I went out to drink, or actually to have dinner, and with this girlfriend, because I just wanted some voices besides the ones that were going on in my head. By the way, after I'd been beaten up, my mom sent me up to Schick-Shadel, where they were so afraid to give me the Duffy treatment, they simply hooked me up for 14 days of sodium pentothal and sent me home. And I wasn't even on that airplane barely, and I had ordered my drink, and I was drinking. And that's the way it was, Reality was too much to face. I had to drink. And so anyway, let's see, where was I? I was somewhere. I was drinking and using as much as I could, and I went out that one night to have dinner with my girlfriend, and she was actually the waitress, and she sat there and talked with me for a few minutes while I ate my dinner, and then I went up to the bar, and I sat there with the bar, and so I met some people, and they said, let's go to this other bar. And so I went with them to the bar, and somehow ended up at closing time crawling on my hands and knees to the car because I don't know. I don't know what happened, and I don't remember. And I'm crawling on my hands and knees to the car. When I get in the car, I'm frightened because I think somebody was actually threatening me. And I get in the car, and I start to drive towards my house. And about that time, a police car pulls up behind me, and the lights go off, and they pull me over, and they said, we think we should go to jail. And I said, I think somebody's trying to kill me. And I passed out. And I used to think, that they were kind and loving. My brother, Bob, who is a cop, said he thinks they just didn't want to mess with me. And so they rolled up the windows and locked the car and turned the lights off and left me. And I woke up, I don't know how long later, and I was like, oh my God, I kind of remembered the cops, and I better be able to get home right away. And I started heading for my house, and the car spun out in the desert, went nose first in the desert, and I thought the thing was going to blow up. I'd seen a lot of movies. And I ran out in the desert, put my hands on the hips, and waited for it to blow up. And when it didn't, I drove it home. That was my 5th car that year. I shoved the engine block back 20, I don't know, anyway. And things were just going from bad to worse, but that was the kind of stuff that was going on in my life. I started I got a roommate that I did, that drank and used like I did. And she had a couple of friends over one night, and this guy walked in, and he said, I bet you can't drink the whole thing. I don't know what's a pint or gallon, I don't remember. And I set out to show him. And I'd been given a gun that night after I came home from the Schick-Shadels, and I remember many times taking the gun and pointing to my head just to see what it felt like. And I had tried to commit suicide. One night I drank 4 bottles of Vicks Formula 44 and eight bottles of Nitol. I just slept for 4 hours. You know, the body was saying, "Don't give up," you know. And you know, I tried to slip my wrists. I did a lot of stuff. I was just, you know, doing stupid things. And anyway, you know, that girlfriend and her guy told me to drink the whole thing, and I found myself in the bedroom holding the gun against my head. And there was a fight over the gun, and I ran out into the desert, and I don't remember too much more except the next morning when I was crawling on my hands and knees to the couch, and I crawled over the bullet shells, and I, you know, trying to remember what happened. You know, just trying to remember what happened. And the phone rang, which was very strange because it had been disconnected a number of times, and it was my mom, and she said, "I'm coming to get you." And I hope to God I never forget the feeling I said to her. I said, "Mom, do I have to take a shower? What do I have to do?" And I went to this hospital in Santa Monica. And prior to that day, I'd gone to a doctor, and he asked me what happened. I had messed up my ankle or whatever. And I said to him, I said, for the first time in my life, I told him the truth. I said, "Doc, I'll tell you what, I don't remember what happened." And that was the first time I could remember telling the truth about anything, because the name of the game was not to get caught at anything, and just to keep moving, because I was afraid to be caught at anything. And so anyway, I went to that hospital, and I said, they came in, they asked me, said, "Sue, what do you want from us?" And I said, with every fiber of my being, I said, "I want to know who Sue is." And I meant that with every fiber of my being. I just wanted to know what the heck was wrong with me. And they asked to see my purse, and I opened my purse up and threw everything out on the bed. And, you know, and there was a lot of anger and hostility, but it was all aimed at me because I just didn't understand. And those first 5 days in the hospital, I wore those puke-on fuzzy slippers and the puked-on robe. And I dared them to get me to participate. And they said, at the end of 5 days, she said, "If you want phone calls or visitors or anything of that nature, you're going to have to go to this thing." And my first meeting was Brentwood meeting. And all I remember was a guy was at the podiums talking about trying to commit suicide by jumping off a 2-story building. And that he was so drunk, he just picked himself up and walked away, you know. And like you, I laughed, and I couldn't remember the last time that I had laughed and that I had felt that laughter inside of my gut. And that laughter, by the way, was identification. And it was the first thing. And that night I went home and went back to that hospital. And the next morning I got up and I got dressed, and I was time for the meeting. And I know for this alcoholic that God did for me what I could not do for myself. Because I did not make a decision that I was an alcoholic. I didn't make a decision. I just realized I was home. You know, because you talked about things that went to the very core of my being, the things that I would have gone to hell, taken with me because I didn't want anybody to know. And you were saying them out loud. And you were talking about those horrible feelings inside of your gut, and I understood that I wasn't alone for the first time in my life, and that there was a place for a person like me. And I stayed 6 weeks in that hospital because I was afraid to go home. I was afraid that this thing would not move with me. And when I got home, I tried staying sober for 2 weeks by myself, and I found myself pounding my fist saying, "Damn it, I don't want to drink." And I called Alcoholics Anonymous in Lancaster, and they sent 2 people out to get me. And this one woman offered her home to me because I didn't have a car yet. And my first car was a $100 car, and I loved that car. I remember that car. And but you know, Alcoholics Anonymous is a really neat place. They opened up their hearts and they opened up their home to me, and they said, "Welcome, keep coming back." You know, and my first year of sobriety was a gift. I just didn't drink. I went to a lot of meetings, but I didn't drink. And at the end of my first year, I got involved in H&I, and that was a real good thing for me because I found I learned a lot about me, and I learned a lot about other alcoholics, because those people that go to H&I are pretty serious about staying sober, you know. And though when you go in, and so Dale said, when you go out the door, you get to be on the outside of that closed door. And I got to learn about some of the places I could have gone had I continued to drink. I was just one drink away from where they were. And anyway, You know, at the end of 2 years, for me, there had to be more to life than news, weather, and sports, if you get my drift. I mean, I was going to meetings, I wasn't drinking. But, you know, they talk about that spiritual malady. And that spiritual malady, and it tells us in that big book that until we, you know, straighten out the spiritual malady, we're not going to be sober. And I was doing things, but I wasn't doing the things that they talked about in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, as I understand it in the big book, and having taken the 12 steps. And finally, I called this man who was 30-some years sober at the time. He's about 50 or 60 years sober now. And I said, I need to talk to somebody about doing my 4th step. And he said, honey, you bring your big book down to Rafters, to Newhall. And he says, I'll introduce you to someone who will introduce you to the 12 steps of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wasn't terribly willing, but I was in a little bit of pain, and it was definitely about jumping out of my skin with uncomfortability. And so I picked up my big book, and I went down to this meeting, and I met this woman, and she opened up the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she introduced me to the 12 steps as I know them today. She showed me how to take my 4th step, and how to look at my character defects, and how to look where I was selfish, still self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened, who I hurt, and that my eyes should be on myself and not the other people. And she taught me how to take that 4th step. And I went home for the first time in my life, driving home from Newhall to Lancaster that night. I knew that I finally had the answer, because I don't know about anybody else in this room, but I always looked for the concrete answers, something that I couldn't be tested for, something that I couldn't screw up, and something that was definite. And I finally had it in my hand. It was a big book. It was a Design for Living, as it's called today. And, you know, I could do that, I could read that, I could take these 12 principles and I could apply it in my life. And as long as I did that, you couldn't throw me out of Alcoholics Anonymous. This wasn't about, you know, good, bad. It was about directions. And now I had the directions, and I knew that it was not an opinion, it was a fact. And it was down there in black and white, and I could open up at any time I wanted. And so then that sponsor of mine took me back to the 1st step, and we talked about being powerless over alcohol, and then where my life was unmanageable. And then she took me into, you know, what the insanity of alcohol was, and what the insanity of alcoholism is today without drinking. Because alcohol is but a symptom. We have to get down to causes and conditions, she said, and those causes and conditions are me and my reaction to people, places, and things. I'm an alcoholic today, whether I'm drinking or not. You know, and my alcoholism manifests itself in every area of my life, every day of my life. And as long as I don't have the 12 steps or God in my life, I'm SOL. You know, so I have a responsibility to myself today to work those 12 steps and to get close to that higher power. And that because I know the difference today between drinking, being sober but dry, and living a different way of life, I don't think I ever want to go back to that again. Because the kind of feeling that I have today is what it's described at the end of the promise. So we will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will comprehend the word serenity and know peace. You know, it's not conditioned on a people, place, and thing, and it's not conditioned on where I am and who I am with and what I'm doing. For the first time in my life, I am the Sue that I always wanted to be. And it's not over yet, thank God, because, you know, I have a long way to go. I'm not perfect. But I have a set of 12 steps that can take me anywhere I go. And I'm very grateful to this program because, you know, when I did that 4th step with my sponsor and also my 3rd step, she showed me how to read pages 86, 87, and 88 on the big book on a daily basis. She showed me the 3rd step prayer. She showed me the 7th step prayer. She took me all the way through the 12 steps of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. She said, now you've gone through, now go back and start over. Keep going. Just keep going. Keep starting over. And she meant with those 12 steps, because it tells us that in step 10 that we must continue for a lifetime. It doesn't mean, you know, once you're done, you're done. You're not done. I'm not done. I must continue for a lifetime to look for those fears and those resentments. So fear is false evidence appearing real. You know, and that for me and this alcoholic thinking is what keeps me stirred up and keeps me in a bad place. You know, and I'm really grateful to be sober today. I've had a trip in the sobriety. I was thinking about this today, that you couldn't put me where I'm at today without having experienced everything that has happened to me before. Before yesterday, before the day before, and the day before that. When I was 10 years sober, our dad passed away, and the same day my husband left me. 10 months later, the brother that I gave the kidney to passed away. There have been a lot of bad days meaning a lot of bad stuff happening, but there's been no bad sober days, because every day that sobriety is about not drinking, and sobriety is, by the way, more than not drinking. I've been taught that sobriety is a way of life, but sobriety is good for me. Sobriety is real good to me. I've gone through a period of depression, and that was hard, but I kept going, because this program has taught me to keep moving forward, to keep my eyes in today and keep my eyes in today only. That everything that God is good to me, God has given me everything I've needed today to stay sober. Everything. And I had everything I needed yesterday. And tomorrow it ain't happening. And the plans might change tomorrow, And if I spend all this time sterling about what's going to happen tomorrow, by the time it gets there, it's far different than I had originally planned it. So I have learned to stay in today, stay in the now, and I'm in a good place. I can't tell you that I'm in a good place because I got out of the way. I got out of the way. I let God into my life. And He is a director, and I am His child. That's really what it boils down to. I didn't have a lot of trust when I came in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself to do what I was saying I would do when I said I would do it. And I didn't trust anybody else, because I knew you were just like me. And today I am exactly where I say I'm going to be, and when I say I'm going to be there. And I know that God is too, And I want to share with you something really quick, and then I'm going to get down, is that, I said earlier this is a family disease, and it is. I've had the opportunity to watch my sister Amy grow into the beautiful woman that she is today. And my brother Mikey is new to us. But it's funny, with working with others is where we get to be reminded of where we came from. And about 3 weeks ago, Michael called me up, and he reminded me about something. He said that he has a commitment, and he said that this guy came in speaking Spanish, and he didn't know. He said, "Is this Alcoholics Anonymous?" These may not be the exact words he said, but this is what I remember. And he said, this guy in Spanish asked him if this was Alcoholics Anonymous. And the guy, Michael speaks Spanish, and he told him, "Yeah, this is. Come on in, sit down, get a cup of coffee. I'll be with you in a minute." And right behind this guy, a few seconds later, comes Michael's friend, who's new to the program as well. And he said, and he speaks Spanish. And he told this guy to go sit down with that guy. And he said, talk to him because he's new, and blah, 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 and help him and get him coffee and all that stuff. And what I heard is a guy who is 3 weeks sober working the steps of this program. And what I heard more than that was the excitement in his voice when he said, because that's what we do here. It's one drunk talking to another, sharing our experience, strength, and hope, so that we can stay sober one more day for the rest of our lives, one day at a time. And we share experience, strength, and hope with each other. We love each other no matter what. And that's what the music that I heard in them, and I thank God for that music. I've heard that music in you, and I've heard that music in my family, and it's a good place to be, For those that are new, the best is yet to come. I got to tell you, I came in this program, I couldn't have told you what has happened to me today that would have happened to me today. I always thought that one day in my wildest dreams I would grow up. Key number one. I would grow up. Not likely, but that I would grow up and that I would become famous and somebody would write a book about me, and they did. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous. And the key is that I can find me, and I can find the answers anytime I want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what, as long as I'm willing to work. I have found everything I've ever wanted for in this program. So if you're new, and keep coming back, because I guarantee you the best is yet to come. Thanks for letting me share.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And if that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.